This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Some very big news. Coming on in the third and fourth segments of this show will be my friend, my colleague, somebody who's very, very close to me, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, America's toughest sheriff. And we have just formed a new public interest group, a 501c3. The website's not up yet. It'll be up shortly, and all of the various documentation will be filed to make it a 501c3. But I wanted to announce it because we have incorporated it. We are both presidents of the group. We're going to run it. It's called America's Sheriff. What could be a better name? What could be more important at this time in American history, when the American people are left defenseless, when the police are being defunded, they're being disparaged, they're being attacked, they're being maimed, they're being killed in the streets. And the left, the radical left, comprised of all kinds of radical groups, radical African Americans, radicals of Muslims, radical of the Jewish left, radical atheists, radical feminists, radical LGBTQ, radical everybody, and we're not against black people are good people. The people that run these radical groups are not. Black Lives Matter, Marxist, communist, separatist. And this is the kind of thing that's being manipulated. They're being used to create a revolution, a Bolshevik revolution, to take down this country. And we don't have any defenses in our cities. People are dying in droves. People are leaving the major cities. As we face the COVID-19 pandemic, which according to cable news, of course, they overemphasize things, is worsening. So we need a group like America's Sheriff to stand in there for the police, for law enforcement, to allow them to do their job. And who better than Sheriff Joe Arpaio and Larry Klayman to do it? Because we are fearless. I might say that we are fearless. Like our founding fathers, and I'm not just trying to scratch our own backs, is that we pledge our lives. We pledge our lives to save a new nation. Our founding fathers pledged their lives to create a new nation. And it was Thomas Jefferson, and you can read about it in my new book, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry, who predicted that we would then someday enter into another revolutionary period where corruption became so bad that the American people would have to rise up again and shed the blood of patriots. Well, we're not advocating violence. We want peaceful and legal means to solve this. That's what we are going to do. And we need your support, and we need your help to do it. So I want you to buy my book. It's up on pre-order. You can get it at Amazon.com, at BarnesandNoble.com, at BooksAMillion.com, all over. Pre-order is coming out in October. I'm hoping to push up the date a little bit. Currently, it's October 27th. I hope we can get it out 2 weeks earlier. I'm working with the publisher to do that because we are in dire straits. The country is hanging by a thread because of the corruption, particularly in Washington, D.C., with the corruption on Capitol Hill, with these court jesters, these clowns that just run around making noise, stuffing money into their pocket, acquiring more power on both sides of the political aisle, I might add. The deep state in the executive branch, which is out to destroy not just the president of the United States, but anybody who wants to in any way further the vision and creation of our founding fathers and preserve liberty and justice for all. I enjoined the mass surveillance of the NSA under Obama, but there's so much more to do, and they continue to do it anyway. They're defying court orders and other things that have been legislated, half-heartedly by our clown show on Capitol Hill, and they don't follow up on anything. And then you've got the federal judges who Jefferson predicted. He was against federal judges. He said, we can't have people in office who are unelected, who think that they have immunity for life. No, read my book. They really don't have immunity for life. They're appointed for good behavior. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives them immunity and life tenure. It's not there. And we've only impeached 8 judges in our entire history, our 244-year history as a nation, with tens of thousands that have been nominated and confirmed. There's no policing there. And there's no policing in the streets because our police have been emasculated. They've been humiliated. They've been harmed. They've been maimed. They've been killed. So we have a lot to do. And we can do things that our Justice Department can't do because our Justice Department won't do anything. It's being run by an attorney general who puts his head in the sand or runs back into his hole. I call him Puxatawny Phil, after the groundhog in Pennsylvania that runs back into his hole most often on February 2nd of each year on Groundhog's Day. He hasn't indicted anybody. Now he says, he gave an interview this week where he says, well, we're not going to be political, we're going to continue on. This is going slowly, meaning he's not going to do anything before the elections on November 3rd. He's not going to do it, okay, because he's into saving his own skin. So he goes on Hannity or he goes on Mark Levin on Fox with his head down, saying, oh, this is terrible. The fake news media is destroying things. We've got a Bolshevik revolution. But what are you doing? You're not stepping in to defend the police. You're not stepping in to defend law enforcement in general. In fact, your Justice Department took an appeal of the Cliven Bundy dismissal of the indictment by an Obama judge. And fortunately, we won that last week by the grace of God at the Ninth Circuit of all places. But this is something that really needs to be addressed. And that's why we are forming and have formed this new group, America's Sheriff. And it will work in conjunction with Freedom Watch, a 1-2 punch. And the sheriff and I are a dynamic duo. And then we're going to bring other people into this group too. Other law enforcement people around the country who are sticking their necks out. We're going to bring in African-American conservatives and libertarians and people of faith because, what Black Lives Matter does not represent the African-American community. It represents Bolsheviks, Marxists, separatists, people who believe they're superior to everybody else. It's in the mold of Farrakhan and Sharpton and these race baiters and vigilantes. And then you've got these white radicals out there, which are even more numerous, that are manipulating the African-American community because they want to take the country down. So this is something which is super, super important. And of course, without getting into politics, Kamala Harris, of course, was nominated in effect by Joe Biden to be vice president. This is someone who, if the president does not win in November, will ultimately become the president of the United States. And she doesn't believe in anything. She just believes in political expediency to get herself elected and into office. Biden, who's brain dead, who probably has the onset of Alzheimer's, won't survive very long. It won't be long in the White House before he's doing coloring books and Kamala Harris is taking over. So this is why we, the people, cannot wait for the elections, okay? Forget the elections. I hope in my personal capacity the president wins. I'm going to vote for him in my personal capacity. I can't say that, tell people as head of a nonprofit to do that, but this is Larry Klayman talking. But there is a very good chance he's not going to win it in the present time. I hope he does. But even if he won, is that he needs help. He needs the American people to rise up. You see what's happened in the first 4 years of his presidency. He's had his hands tied behind his back, and he can't do much of anything. Hasn't built the border wall. Is really not able to step in the cities to protect the police and the local enforcement. He sends a few agents out there, but they're just sitting in buildings hoping that federal courthouses don't get burned down. All of these radicals need to be arrested and thrown in prison where the sun don't shine, tried, convicted, with the key thrown away. Because just like happened in Russia in 1917, they are out to take down the vision of our founding fathers. I don't say they're out to take down the government because we have no government. There's no government today. And there's no constitution either because no one follows it. These radical judges, these federal judges who Jefferson said would become despots, that would cause the country to shed the blood of patriots, to remove the cancer from our body politic. Again, we don't want to do that. We want to do it peacefully and legally. But Jefferson said that was going to happen. So before these radicals come into your neighborhood, as they already have in Beverly Hills a few weeks ago, they came in with T-shirts, "Eat the Rich." That means kill everybody. It's not just rich. It's everybody else who isn't a communist or a socialist or an atheist or a radical in one manner, shape, or form. Is that we need to start doing it for ourselves. And that's why in my book, it takes a revolution. Forget the scandal industry. I'm telling you, to get up off the couch, turn Hannity off. Don't listen to that every night. It's not entertaining. And he's promising things that aren't going to happen. We, the American people, need to make it happen. You know, it goes back to what happened in 1776, because they first petitioned the British Crown to solve the difficulties that were being created by these kingly edicts and the yes men judges of the Court of St. James in London. And they pled with the king, please, we'd like to remain part of the Union, of the Commonwealth, in effect. But if you don't make these changes, if you don't get your hacks off our back, including you, King George, and they tried to say it politely, then we're going to have to take matters into our own hands. And that's ultimately what happened, because the king continued with his yes men, his court jesters in Parliament, just like we have court jesters in our Congress, with his hack judges, the yes men that he had. They didn't have women in those days as judges, so they were yes men. And with the tyranny in his own monarchy to terrorize the colonies, to overtax them, to take their guns away from them, to break into their homes. That's why we have in our Constitution no unreasonable searches and seizures, to steal their property. But what do you think what's happening now? It's the same thing. And I think that we all know with the pandemic, with COVID-19, destroying the country, and nobody's taken action against China except Freedom Watch. I've done that for the compensation. You go to freedomwatchusa.org and see if you qualify for our class action. I'm going to do the second segment here and wrap this up, but then we're going to come back with Sheriff Joe Arpaio and listen to what he has to say, a true American patriot, a true hero who's not afraid of anything. And for that matter, neither am I, and neither should you be. Our founding fathers weren't. We don't have time to be afraid. I'll be right back.
Dangerous.
Don't care. Use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
Got some other news here. Last week, I continued with my push and my efforts to hold the fake news leftist media accountable. I sued CNN. You can see that at larryklayman.com. I sued them for defamation. And here's what happened. I recounted it on an earlier show, but I'm going to remind you how this vicious left-wing media works and how they've tried to destroy the president and anybody that supports the president, like yours truly and others. I represent Dr. Judy Mikovits. She worked with Dr. Fauci at Fort Detrick, Maryland. That's the military's virology lab. And she witnessed Fauci, with money provided by the Obama administration, sending the seeds of COVID-19 over to the Chinese lab in Wuhan, China, to do research, because to do it in this country is illegal. Now, what does Fort Detrick do? It studies viruses to blunt, if it ever happens, a bioweapon attack. Well, you know what? It's happened, okay? What happened with the Chinese is most likely a bioweapon. We brought a lawsuit for that. You can go to freedomwatchusa.org and see if you qualify for that class action and support it. Nobody else is seeking to get damages from the communist Chinese as it continues to ravage our country, this COVID-19. But when Mikovits came forward and gave an interview on Sinclair Broadcasting Group, which is even more conservative than any other network out there. Sinclair owns hundreds of stations around the United States, local stations, because there's an FEC regulation that major networks like ABC, NBC, and CBS can't own more than, I believe it's 20% of local networks. And Sinclair is run by very conservative people. They actually played a bigger role in having President Trump elected than Fox News before Fox News turned leftist under its new head, Lachlan Murdoch. And you can see Chris Wallace trashing the president this week and supporting Kamala Harris if you want an example of how Fox News is going left. But so we did an interview, And immediately, Media Matters, which is financed by George Soros, and CNN attacked with an outrage campaign Sinclair Broadcasting Network, claiming it was being irresponsible, but for publishing this interview, which Judy and I did, where we exposed that Fauci actually gave the seeds of the coronavirus to the Chinese, which they then likely manufactured into a bioweapon. You know, there's a First Amendment. We should be allowed to say those things and alert the American people. And of course, we know that Fauci's been doing everything he can to bring the president down. That's not in dispute. We know that Fauci owns a lot of patents and he may profit handsomely from any vaccines, which even he this week was forced to admit at best would be only 50% effective, even when they're safe. And that, frankly, they're not going to be available anytime soon to be safe. So all of these things need to be said. But Eric Bolling, who had been let go by Fox News years ago and who got a job with Sinclair, got scared. It was on his show, Eric Bolling's show. He panicked and he pulled the segment. And CNN, defamed me by saying, well, I'm a conspiracy theorist that purveys misinformation, which I don't. I asked them for a confirmation that I did that, put up or shut up. They couldn't do it. I have never given forth misinformation. And of course, that damages me and my trade and profession. That's defamation per se. So I sued them this week, and I'll be suing them for Judy Mikovits as well. Because you see, you need to take action in this country. We just can't talk. The people you see on Fox News, on Hannity, they don't do anything. They just get on there and talk. That's it. Nothing else. And Hannity, is a big blowhard. He talks. Okay, that's fine. But you need people who are actually doing things. So I want you to listen closely in our next segment as to what Sheriff Joe Arpaio and I are setting forth to do with our new group, America's Sheriff, to protect law enforcement, to preserve the rule of law, not to be heavy-handed, not to harass people, law enforcement, but to be there to protect the American people. I have police in my family. I know what it's about. I'm a law enforcement officer myself. I'm a former Justice Department prosecutor and defense lawyer. As the head of Freedom Watch and before that Judicial Watch, which I founded, and now being the co-head with Sheriff Arpaio of America's Sheriff, and we're working together with Freedom Watch. I understand what being a law enforcement is all about. I get death threats all the time, and I'm undaunted, and so is the sheriff, because we need to do our job, and we need your support. So I want you to pay very close attention to what Sheriff Arpaio says and what I say, because we're not sitting around just watching cable news. We're rising up as our colonies did in 1776, and we're going to save our country before it goes down for the count. It's very close to doing that right now. I'll be right back with Sheriff Joe Arpaio, America's Sheriff.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
We're back with my friend, my client, my colleague, America's toughest sheriff, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who narrowly won his re-election bid, so to speak. When I say re-election, because he was the sheriff of Maricopa County for many, many years, and it was a squeaker. But we've got some very good news, because in this day and age of the domestic terrorists in the streets, in this day and age of the police being defunded and disrespected, being attacked, sometimes even killed, and it's not that infrequent, and the American people being left defenseless in our major cities, and now it's spreading into the suburbs. Just a few weeks ago in Beverly Hills, California, you had radical leftists wearing T-shirts saying, "Eat the rich." Fortunately, the Beverly Hills police did react, but in most cities, they're not reacting because they're on stand-down orders. So we have a really big announcement today, and you're going to see more about it in the future. The sheriff has also written a new book. I've written a book. But we have just formed a nonprofit, 501c3, on behalf of the American people, called America's Sheriff. Very appropriate. And Sheriff Arpaio and I, we're running it. We're going to be the presidents, the chief executive officers, and the purpose of that is to defend the police, to make sure that they're properly funded, properly respected, and that they're able to do the job which they risk their lives every day to do. And, you know, in addition to the sheriff, who's my very close friend who I've represented, we're the ones that beat back Obama's executive amnesty for 5 million illegal aliens. We sued CNN, Rolling Stone, and Huffington Post when the sheriff was defamed. We got a judge that basically ran for the exits, but we tried. This fake news media continues on, but we're not afraid of anything. And our good police are not afraid of anything. And I might say I've had police in my family in Philadelphia, so I know what it's all about, too. And I'm a law enforcement officer. I'm a former Justice Department lawyer. So it's a dynamic duo between the sheriff and I, and we're going to be the leading edge here in protecting the police and law enforcement generally, because, frankly, as it currently stands, our government is not doing enough. And we're going to be the hamburger helper to help the police regain their position in society, which is necessary for our country to remain free. I want to introduce you, as always, to Joe Arpaio, the sheriff, America's Sheriff. Sheriff, congratulations on this new group that we formed. Tell us about your thoughts about it, how we're going to go about it, and in a sense, and I'll add to that because I'm the lawyer, you're the spokesman, and you're the think tank, because you understand how police need to be able to do their job. And tell us about your book, too, because that's extremely important that the people get and buy this book once it comes out.
Thank you, Larry, for taking on this issue. You've taken on some tough issues, as we know. Also, I probably the only sheriff in history that went after the president of the United States, and that's Obama with his fake birth certificate. There's no doubt in my mind, after 50 years in law enforcement, serving as the head of the federal drug enforcement in Turkey, Syria, Mexico, South America, Latin America, you name it. So I have a little international experience. But this is a issue, Larry, that I want to thank you. I believe the time is right to tell it like it is. When you talk about law enforcement, criminal justice system, it's a bigger picture than that. And I'm sure you and I will try to help the police. On the other hand, we will reveal the corruption from politicians regarding the criminal justice system and other matters too. So I'm looking forward to that corruption type program, as well as not throwing the police under the bus because of no guts mayors, governors, and also members of the federal government. It's very sad. If there's any time for you and I to use our combined experience with the guts to speak out, this is the time, not only for the police, but for our country as a whole. So I want to thank you for that. I have a lot of experience. I've been sheriff for 24 years, longest in the history of Maricopa County. I was 60 when I ran. 24 years, I guess the public can guess that I'm a senior citizen, 80 years old, and I'm sure that helped in me losing the primary, the first primary I ever lost, running for sheriff. But there was a lot of political situations, even with my own party, that did not support me, and that's sad. When you have the big boys that own sports teams turn on me and support the liberal Soros-funded sheriff that beat me in 2016, that gives you an example where money drives everything they could care about public safety. So together, I think we're going to do good. We're going to get the word out, and I hope we shake up certain people. And one thing, I'm not vindictive, but I'm very, very supported of doing something in a legal way. And you're a lawyer. You've been through it all, Larry. In a legal way, but also to send a message that we're not going to put up with this political, economic corruption that now exists. So I'm looking forward. My book is coming out in about 3 weeks. Some part of that book you're going to be familiar with. I want to thank you for that chapter. And it's going to be interesting. I think people are going to buy the book. I'm not doing it for money. I want to get a message out. That was the only way. But now we have another way, Larry. You and I, with this foundation, this subject matter, also get the word out. So I'm looking forward to it, and working together, we're going to make a difference. And one thing I've known about you, Larry, you're a patriot. You don't care. You don't just do it for money. You do it for our country, and I respect you for that. It's going to be a tough battle, Larry. You know it. I know it. They've been taking shots at me and you for many, many years. But I think the Bible said the truth will set you free. I'm counting on that. So Thank you for thinking of me and giving me the opportunity to continue my quest to defend our country and our Constitution.
It's mutual, Sheriff. I mean, we are not just very good friends. We're colleagues. We fought some wars together. We're not done. We're just starting, really. We took on Obama's executive amnesty for 5 million illegal aliens. We filed the first case in Washington, D.C. It came upon a very politicized Obama-appointed judge, Chief Judge Beryl Howe, who allowed the witch hunt against our president to continue for so long with grand jury leaks. She was in charge. And she said, this is just a political case, so I'm going to dismiss it. So what did we do then? We went to a case that was filed in Texas, in the Southern District of Texas. It went before Judge Hainan, Andrew Hainan. We became an intervener in that case. There were 25 states' attorney generals, and we ultimately succeeded. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court struck down Obama's executive amnesty. We've also fought to get the truth out with regard to Obama's birth certificate. We never said where he was born, but we did say that it was fraudulent. It clearly is fraudulent. You had forensic evidence in that regard. A fraud was committed on the people of Arizona. And even if you didn't have the forensic evidence, the birth certificate said that Obama was an African American in 1961 when he was born. They didn't use the term then. That term was coined by Jesse Jackson in the 1970s. So you can tell, notwithstanding the photoshopping of it, notwithstanding that no one's ever seen the original, that this was a fraud. And you were brave enough to come forward, and I was with you on that as well. And then, of course, the fake news media. You stuck your neck out when CNN, Huffington Post, and Rolling Stone defamed you as a convicted felon. You weren't a convicted felon. You're not a convicted felon. You were also pardoned by the President of the United States. And all you were found liable for was like a traffic ticket, a misdemeanor. But they have to try to destroy. And I guess the moral to the story is what I'm saying is that you judge yourself by your enemies. If you're not creating these radical leftist enemies against you, then you're not doing your job. And you've always done your job, and you've been unafraid, and I'm unafraid. So this is a dynamic duo. And America's sheriff is not just going to talk. We don't talk. We don't like the people that go on Fox News that have never done anything. We are actually doers. We put actions before words and watch what we do. And then, of course, there's Freedom Watch, my other group, and they'll work hand in hand together to be your Justice Department, your America's sheriff. And this is a beacon of light for the American people who, with the exception of President Trump, who's had his hands tied behind his back, doesn't feel like they have anybody representing them. And, thank God for the president. We want him to succeed, and we're going to help him in any way we can. We can do things that his Justice Department can't and won't do, and we've seen that. He's not in control of his Justice Department. The Attorney General, Sheriff, hasn't indicted Comey. He hasn't indicted McCabe. He hasn't indicted the Lovebirds or Clapper or Brennan, the intelligence czars. And you talk about that in your book, The Mass Surveillance, and that occurred on the people of Arizona. And I talk about it in my book, too, which is coming out. It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry. You can get it, pre-order it on Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, all over the place. But, we need to not just bring hard-hitting cases, we need to educate, because the American people have been poorly educated, unfortunately. These leftist colleges have created these radicals. So I want to thank you, too. And I just want to emphasize that America's Sheriff, and that's the name of the group, is going to be an action group, not just talking. And we're not interested in talking. Talking is important to educate. Our founding fathers educated. They coalesced the colonies. But action to protect the police already. I brought a lawsuit, and we're going to now, have America's Sheriff involved, too, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to protect the policemen there who were fired when a Soros-funded group hacked their personal websites with retweets and other kinds of things like that. And they weren't even racist, but the district attorney who was elected with the money of George Soros, who helped to defeat you in Arizona, the district attorney stepped in with the mayor, who was up for re-election, and the police chief, who was since fired for sexual harassment. They have a new one, Danielle Outlaw from Portland, Oregon, if you can believe that. And, she's just simply putting her head in the sand, doing nothing. The Philadelphia police are under siege, and so are they in every major city, whether it's New York, Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Chicago, all over. So we have a really big job to do. So I want to thank you. So tell us a little bit more about your book. What's going to be the title of it? And, when it comes out, why people need to read it.
I've written 2 other books, America's Toughest Sheriff and Joe's Law, while I was the sheriff. Now this book is coming out probably within 3 weeks. I did not write the book for political reasons, since I did not know I was going to run again for sheriff and come back, which would have been the biggest political trumpet probably in the United States.
Sheriff, we're going to be right back with the final segment, the verdict segment. So hold on. I want to hear the rest of this. It's very important. You're listening to Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We just announced our new group, America's Sheriff. We'll be right back with America's Sheriff.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow patriots, people who believe in law and order, people who believe in the vision and creation of our founding fathers, our great country, which is slipping away, is that we just announced that we're forming a new group, a nonprofit, 501c3. It's already been incorporated, America's Sheriff. And Sheriff is talking about his book because, you see, this is a clarion call for the American people to rise up and do it for themselves. In my book, It Takes a Revolution. Forget the scandal industry. I say, get up off the couch, turn the cable news off, and let's get to work. Join us in what we're doing. Join us in America's Sheriff. Join us in Freedom Watch. We need to act ourselves, and that's what our founding fathers did in the days, months, and years leading up to and after 1776. And it was Thomas Jefferson who predicted that we come into another revolutionary period. And we want to do it peacefully and legally. That's what the sheriff and I are going to be doing, using the courts, using the court of public opinion, using other means, citizens' grand juries, all kinds of tools to protect law enforcement and to let them do their job, because soon these radical leftists will be in your backyard and they'll be demanding the keys to your house, the keys to your car, taking all of your property, and if you don't do it, they might even kill you. I mean, we've seen a lot of deaths already around the country. The Sheriff, tell us a little bit more about your book and what you're trying to tell the American people and warn them about, and how we're going to solve it.
Larry, just briefly, David Roberts out of Texas, he's a very conservative publisher, writers helping me do that. It's going to be a book that tells all in that sense, the birth certificate, other situations you're familiar with meeting a certain judge, discussing wiretaps on me. I could go on and on. So it goes back a little about my history again, when I was born and all the way up. But Larry, I'll tell you one thing. That book or anything you say and I say, I can back it up, because the day I was born, my mother gave her life for me, refused an abortion. But I was born in a hospital. Never been in the hospital in 88 years overnight, except when I busted my arm for overnight. So I was healthy. I am healthy, regardless of the age. And the book will be my third one, but I've got a gut feeling this one will really outdo the other two regarding my life. But I have kept every record. I have a room full of documentation, all the media in my whole career, and, the reports that I documented in the hills of Turkey, the corruption that I came about in my career. So nobody's going to have to say, well, that's a phony. It's a book that is nonfiction, 100%. So I'm not stupid. I kept records, and I don't say things unless I can back it up. And that includes that birth certificate.
Well, and then we're going to keep fighting in that regard, too, because this needs to be enforced, the rule of law. And I want to thank you, Sheriff, and you'll be back many, many times on this show, and we'll be working together. God bless you. You're a very young 88. You're more like you're 65, okay? And I'm now 69. So we have the wisdom of age, and we've seen it all, and we know how to fight, and we will fight for the American people. So thank you, Sheriff. God bless you. And we'll be in touch very shortly again, as we have a big mission to do.
Thank you, Larry.
Now, I want to wrap this thing up by telling the American people that this is what needs to be done today. We've had all this talk in Washington, D.C. Congress is a clown show. They're in it for themselves, stuffing money into their pockets from special interests, getting themselves reelected, promoting themselves on cable news. We've got an executive branch which is occupied by the deep state, which has worked against the president of the United States to try to defeat him and tried to harm everybody else, including yours truly and Sheriff Joe Arpaio, that gets in its way. And we've got a federal judiciary, frankly, which is compromised and generally corrupt. There are a few good ones, but not many. And Jefferson predicted they would become despots. So I want you to go to freedomwatchusa.org. Join our Justice League. Soon we're going to be set up with regard to America's Sheriff as well. And I want to thank you for listening to me, and God bless you, and God save your family. Because I just want you to know that Larry Klayman and Sheriff Joe Arpaio, we're not taking anything sitting down. We're here for you. I'll be back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.